And that money that we spend didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of taxpayers' pockets. That's why I get so irritated. Irritated is the wrong word. Angry. When I find out that people take advantage of the American people's generosity. It makes me want to knee someone in the groin. It just makes me furious. And I think the American taxpayers feel the same way. What I'm about to tell you, Mr. President, let me apologize in advance, is deeply disgusting. I mean, it is clown world on steroids. And when I first read about this, Mr. President, I read it a second time because I experienced slack-jawed astonishment. And when I read it a second time and I realized it was true, I just wanted to run away screaming. What am I talking about, Mr. President? We have discovered, the federal prosecutors have discovered, that for the last 5 years, there has been massive welfare fraud in the great state of Minnesota. Massive. Over $1 billion of American taxpayer money.
That's crazy.
Has been stolen. Just stolen. They can call it fraud, but a better term would be stealing. And it is a fact that the kickbacks paid to parents to allow their children to be signed up as autistic, in order to get the federal taxpayer money, the parents were of Somali ancestry.
So Senator John Kennedy is going scorched earth over the fraud, the massive fraud, currently estimated at over $1 billion. Another estimate came out that said it was as much as $8 billion. And we are watching closely because he's about to say something that's really important, that politicians from Minnesota were complicit.
It doesn't give me any pleasure to say that, but it is a fact. And it is a fact that the politicians, not the employees, the rank and file employees and the welfare offices, but the politicians in Minnesota let this happen. It is disgusting, Mr. President. Disgusting. We're trying to put together a budget right now. And we've got state officials in Minnesota, because they wanted votes, that are allowing people in their state who were crooks to steal $1 billion from the American taxpayer. Money that could have gone to people who really were homeless, and children who really were hungry, and kids who, through no fault of their own, really were autistic, instead of stolen, a portion of which allegedly was sent to a terrorist organization in Somalia. Man, these people ought to all be put in jail, including the politicians. Makes me want to stick my head in an oven.
Senator John Kennedy. He is possibly my favorite senator right now. Now, essentially, he's saying that Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar need to be in prison. If you agree, let me know in the chat. And while you're here, okay, whenever the stories are being covered or commentary is being covered, if you agree, use an emoji. You don't have to type lengthy messages to express yourself. Just use an emoji, okay? Dip your toe in the water, okay? You'll like it, all right? Now, we're going to follow the money. We're going to follow the story, because here is Senator John Kennedy itemizing, while I had to cut out a bunch of detail that he put in there, but essentially there have been cases of fraud that have been discovered, and he details the timelines. And if you want to watch the full video, it's right there on the internet. You know, he basically details everything. Now, it's being discussed on the Senate floor. And what's the reaction of the representatives from Minnesota? What's the reaction from the governor? Last week, we saw his reaction, and it was quite hilarious, if you recall. Now, while all of this is going on, Fox News releases a report that essentially says that in the middle of all this fraud going on, okay, that is essentially happening from within the Somalian community, it has been revealed that Ilhan Omar's net worth has exploded from $65,000 in 2020 to $30 million in 2024. That's a 46,000% increase, with some figures placing her near 40 million in 2025. Now, we're going to watch this report and then give me your thoughts in the chat.
Well, now investigators are tracking the web of fraud to other Minnesota Democrats, such as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Many of the suspects linked to the scheme live in her district, including a restaurant owner who hosted events for her. He has since been convicted of stealing $12 million in COVID funds.
Now, we're going to watch, I think the restaurant owner, I think he's the owner of the Safari restaurant. We're going to watch the video covering how she was hosted there, and she used it as a springboard for some of her campaigns. And now it has also come to light that some investigation took place, and it revealed how deep the fraud goes. Because it's insane that all this has been happening for years.
Officers from our Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, working in teams, have conducted over 1,000 site visits across the Minneapolis-St. Paul area as part of this operation. What they found should shock all of America. Focusing on a list of over 1,000 target cases involving more than 900 individuals, our officers encountered blatant marriage fraud, visa overstays, people claiming to work at businesses that can't be found, forged documents, abuse of the H-1B visa system, abuse of the F-1 visas, and many other discrepancies. Over the course of the operation, our officers found indication of fraud, non-compliance, or public safety and national security concerns in nearly a little less than 50% of the cases interviewed.
Now, you're going to start hearing accusations of racism and Islamophobia, when the evidence presented before us is that this singular community has essentially been a hub of all kinds of crime. Now, you might say, well, that is the same for many other communities. Look, let's not try to do this, okay? Let's not do this. This is a math problem. When you look at one community within a general community in the city of Minneapolis, and you see that this one community has been responsible for the large-scale fraud, large-scale immigration fraud, and all kinds of criminality. You can't start gaslighting us to say that, oh well, you're pointing this out because you're racist. This was an investigation carried out, and these are the results of that investigation.
We found troubling patterns with the Uniting for Ukraine program that should have raised serious concerns under other administrations, such as an individual filing to sponsor more than 100 aliens.
So Somalis, and I guess he's still referring to the Somalis. Somalis were running a scheme as well, the Uniting for Ukraine program, and they still dipped into the funds raised for that. Interesting.
Organizations sponsoring hundreds. We are continuing to investigate these cases. Some of the other troubling cases that our officers found. In one case, officers identified an alien who had overstayed his visa waiver, who was the son of a known or suspected terrorist on the no-fly list. He had previously been found to have engaged in marriage fraud, which resulted in the denial of several immigration benefit requests. He was arrested and is now presently being returned to his country of origin. In another, an individual admitted to obtaining a fake death certificate in Kenya for just $100 to prove he was no longer married. In reality, his wife is alive, living here in Minneapolis, and is the mother of 5 of his children. And incidentally, he has another wife living in Sweden with whom he has an additional 3 children. In another,
these guys are spawning like tadpoles. Okay, like, I don't mean to be crass or insulting, but they just give birth to children. And you know what? Later in this video, we're going to show you why. We're going to show you why. Okay, just stay tuned. It turns out that this is a pattern. That this pattern that we see in the United States is actually happening elsewhere in the world. We're going to see it. Okay, just stay tuned.
Another case, an alien entered the United States without inspection in 2023. Was released by Border Patrol. The alien married a U.S. citizen while in removal proceedings and was interviewed at the Minneapolis-St. Paul USCIS field office just last week, where both he and his American spouse, stated under oath that their marriage was legitimate. The USCIS officers conducting the interview were suspicious. The site visits were authorized the same day. The American spouse ultimately that afternoon admitted the marriage was fraudulent and entered into solely for immigration purposes and withdrew her petition for that alien. This type of same-day action for interview, from interview to site visit has...
Now, well, again, we see that investigations are happening and lots of stuff are being revealed. Now, Representative Jason Lewis, former Representative Jason Lewis, and I guess it's former because of this video, exposed $100 million worth of fraud in Minnesota's child care subsidy program, involving primarily Somali-owned daycares with fake enrollments, kickbacks, and cash shipments abroad via the Minneapolis airport. Sorry about that, tongue-tied for a bit. And this was a video that was taken, I think this was 2017 or 2018. So this isn't something that only started a few weeks back when this was highlighted. This conversation has been happening for years. So have a listen.
Situation in my home state of Minnesota where we've got a number of daycare providers that are openly violating federal and state laws and regulations, taking money for personal use, using the money to set up a fraudulent child care client, and then providing a kickback has been reported. This is a major issue. There are allegations that, well, not just several, you've got 23 child care or daycare centers either closed or under investigation. The fraud may go as high as $100 million. Now think about that. In fiscal year 2018, Minnesota received $120 million in federal funding. The state contributed about $50 million in matching and maintenance funds, and we may have a fraud case of nearly $100 million.
This is back in 2018, guys. Now, Senor Mustachio says, bring back Minnesota's flag. Look, the Minnesota, very soon, look, we're going to play some really aggravating videos. Okay, so keep your chats coming. Okay, if you can't type, if you're at work, just leave an emoji. All right, leave an emoji. All right, an emoji will do. Okay, just an emoji, just a tip. Okay, now you have these kinds of things going on for years. Politicians sweeping it under the rug, and the question will always be why? How come this was happening and nobody did anything about it?
In this state, with money then being transferred out of the country via MSP Airport. This is a big issue in my home state of Minnesota. Can you share with me what your agency is doing to investigate this? And I'm just wondering if we could not come up with some form of stricter enforcement to monitor the states that are receiving these funds to make certain that there's some sort of oversight here. Thank you for your testimony today. I yield.
All right. So this was back in 2018. This isn't new. What's the connection between this fraud and the politicians from Minneapolis? And in case you didn't know, Ilhan Omar is a politician from Minneapolis. And here she is. Now, do you remember that restaurant that was pointed out to have been involved in the fraud and the owner was indicted? There, all of this is connected. The Somali community is connected. Okay. And Ilhan Omar is right in the middle of it. So here she is at that restaurant, okay, doing an event.
horta aad iyo aadaan ugu faraxsanahay in maanta
And
safari
it's
aan
in,
soo
and
gaarnay.
sorry, there's a
Sida dadka badan ay
subtitle.
u og yihiin.
Now there's a subtitle. And guys, let me know in the chat, is it okay for people to move to your country and refuse to speak the language? They lived there for years. According to Ilhan, she was 8 years old when she moved to the United States. How old is she right now? Okay, I guess she might be over 40 years old or more. And she still communicates with the people from her former country. I would like to be respectful and say former country, but essentially, as we're going to keep watching, we will see that she doesn't consider the United States her country, because as far as she's concerned, everything she does is for Somalia.
ciyaalkeena yaryar ilaa iyo number la eg 20 milyan oo ciyaal iskooley ah waxay cuntadooda ka helaan iskoolka kaliyo marka waxaan fursad u helnay in aan sharci soo gudbino.
All right, so there she is, smack dab in the middle of the food program. All right, the Feeding Our Future program that just got roped into this multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. All right, there she is. Now, Senator Kennedy has said openly that anyone involved in this fraud has to go to jail, both the businesses that ran the fraud and the politicians who covered it up. And Ilhan Omar essentially is one of these politicians. Now, what does she have to say for herself? Okay. When it's pointed out to her during an interview on Face the Nation that President Trump pointed out her community, here's how she reacts.
So there are 80,000 people of Somali descent in your state, but the president has been very focused, not just on them, but on you. In this extraordinary cabinet meeting, he said Somalis, quote, come from hell. They complain and they do nothing but bitch. Take a listen.
These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. We don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. Thank you very much.
And by the way, I agree.
Is vehement agreement from his cabinet members there. I just wonder what the reaction is in your district to have that from the highest office in the land.
It's disgusting. It's
really
completely disgusting. These are Americans that he is calling garbage. And we feel...
Sorry, I need to cut in here. Only 60% of the population, the Somali population in there, are American citizens. There's a large percentage of people in there who don't have the right paperwork, whose visas have expired, and a lot of them are being investigated for immigration fraud. So her going on air and laying a blanket statement like these are all American citizens that he's referring to, she's lying. Like you know it and I know it, she's lying.
Like there is an unhealthy obsession
really?
That he has on the Somali community, and an unhealthy and creepy obsession that he has with me. I think it is also really important for us to remember that this kind of hateful rhetoric and this level of dehumanizing can lead to dangerous actions by people who listen to the president.
And 95% of the Somalis in your state are U.S. citizens.
Yes.
Just for clarity there.
Yeah, so Face the Nation giving Ilhan Omar a softball interview and helping her along to say, well, you know, here's the statistics of those who are U.S. citizens, just to clarify the point. So who's running the interview, or is Ilhan Omar now a part of the Face the Nation crew? Essentially, left-leaning media is the mouthpiece of the Democrat Party. We all know it. All right. Now, Ilhan Omar accused President Trump of calling the Somali people garbage, calling American citizens garbage. But she didn't have anything to say when Joe Biden said this about Donald Trump's voters.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Yeah, she has tons to say when President Trump expresses frustration about the insane corruption happening in the Somali community, accuses him of calling them garbage when he didn't use those words. You see how they gaslight the American people? They gaslight everyone. People who don't have the time to do the kind of research that I do. They just tell you this is what he said, and because you don't have the time to skim through the speeches or listen to entire cabinet meetings, you believe them. So she essentially, on top of all of the nastiness happening in Minneapolis, she adds to it, slandering President Trump and saying that he called American citizens garbage. Meanwhile, we have it on record that Joe Biden did that, and she just basically, is just like, well, she doesn't act like she saw that. Now, Jenny says Donald Trump is a great president, and she put in a lot of heart emojis. Thank you, Jenny, for that for that chat. Thank you. And like I said, just engage. Just let me know your thoughts as we go through the story, and do your best to keep the chat in line with the story. Now, while Ilhan Omar is throwing her tantrum, all right, it has been revealed that Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, the AG of Minnesota, were the ones who led Democrat states in suing the Department of Agriculture for trying to determine how many illegals were on welfare. They're protecting the Somalis, okay? So let's listen to this.
And the Democrats will continue to abuse it. They sued the USDA for simply asking them to tell them how many illegal aliens are on the programs in California and New York and these other states. They sued them. You need to take account of what people are doing here in each party, the leaders and the President of the United States. We are trying to get government to work more efficiently and effectively for the people, and we are getting stopped and hindered by political games by Democrats, and that's why we're so frustrated.
Yeah, so this is what the Democrats have been up to. They've been exchanging votes for money or access to commit corruption. Based on everything that we've seen, that's essentially what the lay of the land looks like. All right. Now, with people acting like this, do you think that they are on the side of the United States of America? Ilhan Omar, in the last interview, essentially was saying to President Trump, you're talking to American citizens, but is he really talking to American citizens? Here's the former Prime Minister of Somalia saying the quiet part out loud. Now, yet again, they always speak to themselves in the Somali language. And there's a subtitle. So watch the subtitle to see what he actually says, because he essentially says the interests of Ilhan Omar are not with the American people, are not with Minnesota. They are not with the city of Minneapolis. No. The interest of Ilhan Omar is that of Somalia. Have a listen.
إلهان معها قضية إلهان معها قضية مينيسوتا معها قضية غير مريكان قضية إلهان وقضية صوماليا.
Essentially, the success of Ilhan is the success of Somalia. This is crazy. Okay, how is this being allowed to happen? How are people who are not loyal to the American people allowed to be in Congress? It's almost like allowing somebody faithful to an enemy country to be in government to subvert the agenda of the country that they are working for. Okay? Ilhan Omar is there to serve the interests of the Somali people, according to the former Prime Minister of Somalia. And there she is in the background. There she is in the background, smiling and nodding her head. That is exactly where her loyalties lie. Now, there's also the habit that Ilhan Omar has of attacking anyone who is connected to President Trump. And in this case, Stephen Miller is the next person she's about to attack. Stephen Miller put out a statement saying that people should learn to assimilate. And whenever you have these people who come in in large groups into a country, they don't assimilate, and that creates problems. And Ilhan Omar's response is not, well, he's right, because historically that's what happens. It happened in ancient Rome. It's happened in many countries. Okay. And I think it's happening here too. So we have to learn how to assimilate. We have to tell our communities to assimilate. But what does she do? She calls Stephen Miller a Nazi. And Stephen Miller, if you don't know, is Jewish.
I want to ask you about something else that the architect of the president's immigration policy, Stephen Miller, said. On Thanksgiving Day, he posted, "No magic transformation occurs when failed states cross borders. At scale, migrants and their descendants recreate the conditions and terrors of their broken homelands." What do you make of this argument of failure to assimilate and sort of ruining America? How do you understand this?
I mean, when I think about Stephen Miller and his white supremacist rhetoric, it reminds me, yes, it reminds me of the way the Nazis described Jewish people in Germany. And, you know, as we know, there have been many immigrants who have tried to come to the United States who've turned back, one of them being Jewish immigrants. We know the way that
And Stephen Miller is Jewish, remember.
The way that people were described who were coming from Ireland, Irish immigrants. We know the way in which people were described back then when they were Italian immigrants. And to me, you know, we're yes, of course, ethnically Somali. We are in this country as Americans.
Yeah.
We are citizens. We are productive part of this nation, and we will continue to be.
So what Ilhan Omar is saying, which is a very dumb take, is that the Somali community is very productive because they have generated so much corruption. That is the thing that they produce, and corruption is very beneficial to the Democrats. That's how productive they are, as far as she's concerned. Now, let me point something out. So in case because whenever they come on these shows and they try to give you a history lesson, it's more of revisionist history. Because what tends to happen is this. They tell you how the Italians immigrated and were treated the same way, how the Irish immigrated and were treated the same way, how the Jewish immigrated and were treated the same way, and you know how this is more of the same white nationalist attitude that you see in the United States of America. That is not true. All right. These three groups that she mentioned earlier did one thing that the Somalis aren't doing. They integrated. Within one generation, they had taught all of their children to speak in English, got them educated. They were well integrated and assimilated seamlessly into American society. They've produced lawyers, doctors, engineers. They've produced top-ranking politicians, and they've also produced assets in the military that have fought in the nation's wars. What have the Somali people done? They've essentially flooded Western countries. Now, this may be sounding like a hit piece on Somali people, but no, it's not. It's just evidence to show that everything that we're being told by mainstream media and being told not to say that corruption is happening from these people, and listening to Ilhan Omar claiming that when you're being given facts that it is a Nazi propaganda smear on the Somali people, is not essentially the truth. In every country where the Somali people have gone to, they overwhelmingly rely on government welfare. Right. So let's watch this report and just look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. 1 second. Sorry about that.
When people criticize Somali foreigners in Western countries, here are a few things to keep in mind. In Norway, 27% of Somali-born households do not rely mainly on government assistance. In Sweden, 36% of Somali-born adults are either employed or in education. In Denmark, 31% of Somali immigrants and their descendants are not on public benefits. These are just a couple things to remember during the discussion of whether or not we should let more third worlders into the United States.
All right, so the video isn't showing up on my screen. So let's just break down these numbers. In Norway, 73% of Somali immigrants are on government aid. Sweden, 64% do not have jobs or education. Denmark, 69% of Somali immigrants are on public benefits. And in America, 88%. Look, guys, I always say this is a math problem. And whenever you have a large group of people flood into the country, they don't have an education, they refuse to learn the language, they refuse to assimilate, they insist on dressing the way they choose to dress in order to differentiate themselves from the regular American society. They decide that they're going to remain as a separate identity because when politicians try to, pander to them for votes, you need to speak to them in their language. These aren't immigrants, all right, guys? These are not immigrants. These are people who are in your country essentially wanting to change your country into the country that they came from. That's essentially what we see, right? Now, there's a Somali-born rep who basically has said the quiet part out loud, that the Somalis are there to essentially discuss things that concern Somalia. I'm going to try to play this video, and if it plays, then we'll go on with the story. If it doesn't, then we're going to just jump into the chat and have a conversation around this. Now, if you're watching, all right, leave an emoji, leave your thoughts about this story, all right? There's tons to talk about. We went through a weekend. There's lots of things that happened over the weekend, but this is the thing that floated to the top. Because do you know what? They don't want you and I taking a closer look at this. Did you know that this was a conversation that started happening all the way back in 2018? Did you? They would have you think that this is a Donald Trump obsession. Ilhan Omar would have you think that all of the information that's coming out right now about this community, that essentially is on 88% of the population is on welfare. They are not productive. They are not a net positive to the American community or the communities where they live. How come we're being gaslit to believe that that is the case? Right. So I'm going to hang on. I'm going to play this video. All right. And then you be the judge of it. Because at the end of the day, the question is, why are the American people asked to put up with this? Again, subtitles. So you've read some of the subtitle. Here's what he's saying. Okay, this is a Somali-born Ohio rep. Okay, his name is Ismail Muhammad, and what he just said was that we have Ilhan Omar representing us. What does that mean, guys? Isn't he supposed to be concerned about what's going on in Ohio? Isn't he supposed to be more concerned about the constituents he represents in Ohio? No. As far as he's concerned, Ilhan Omar doesn't represent Minnesota. He doesn't represent Ohio. They all represent Somalia. Now, let me know in the chat, all right, why you think the United States is putting up with this. It doesn't make any sense. This is insanity. We've gone through Senator John Kennedy blowing a gasket and essentially demanding that everyone involved in this fraud has to be arrested and go to jail, including the politicians. And that includes Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is on TV essentially claiming racism for the focus on the crimes being committed by this community. Now, don't paint with a broad brush. There are people in the community who are there genuinely to be a net positive to the United States. So forgive me if it sounds like I'm painting with a broad brush. However, when you look at the reports that we've covered already, we see such a blatant disregard for American culture, a blatant disregard for law and order and the rule of law. These people have stolen over $1 billion from the American taxpayer. We've seen a history and a habit of people from Somalia moving to Western countries and essentially becoming a burden on the taxpayers. All right, what are we missing here? What are we missing here? I think it's up to the countries where they live to do what needs to be done. Before I immigrated, I needed to show proof that I could, that my family could fund itself and not become a burden on the taxpayers. And that's what we had to go through. We went through a process. So I don't know how people like this were allowed to come into the United States and then become a burden on the taxpayer. And it's okay. In fact, if you point it out, you're racist. If you point it out, you have an obsession with Ilhan Omar. It's insane to see this happening, but we need to call it out. We need to discuss it. Now, as always, please consider putting your thoughts in the chat. If you can't chat because you're at work, it's fine. But you can leave an emoji. You can leave it. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up icon to let YouTube know that you're enjoying this content and that people like you should be told about this content. That's what that button does. So give it a thumbs up. And even if you give it a thumbs down, it's fine. All right. You make sure YouTube doesn't show it to anybody who looks like you. Okay. And when I say looks like you, who basically has the same preferences like you. All right. Now, we're going to be engaging in the chat. We have a lot of conversations that are coming up, and some of them are, we are responding also to chats from other stories that we've covered. All right. So we're going to dive straight in. So don't forget to let your thoughts be heard. All right. We're going to be reading everyone's chat. All right. Now, William Bloomer 2115, he's reacting to a live stream we did on Tim Walz. Remember, Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota, and this is where the fraud is happening. Tim Walz was melting down about people driving by his house and calling him a retard. Okay, and then William Bloomer asks, "Are they yelling tampon retard?" Well, I don't know. I don't know if they did. The report doesn't say that. Brian Britz 8679 says, so I guess Elmer Fudd's out of the question. I don't know who Elmer Fudd is. Can anyone throw some light on who Elmer Fudd is? I have no clue who Elmer Fudd is. Again, on the same story on the fraud in Minnesota, if the Chicago government is a corporation, okay, basically, he's responding to Brandon Johnson's statement saying that he's running the largest corporation in Chicago, or in the state of Illinois. And Patricia is saying, if the government is a corporation, then the CEO should be fired immediately because the city of Chicago is being run in a horrid way. Patricia says again, A country that has language that is not carried uniformly across it cannot communicate to all the people. This leaves people in the dark and confused about what the leaders are saying. And that is essentially what's going on with these communities that insist on holding on to their languages. The Jews came in and they stopped speaking Yiddish. They switched over to English. They insisted that their children speak English because they came and they wanted to be American. They didn't come to change America into wherever they came from. They came to become Americans. These Somali people don't want to change. They're holding on to their language. They're holding on to their dress codes. They want to change America into the shithole country they came from. All right. I'm Nigerian. I have no interest in changing this country into where I came from. I like the food where I came from. I enjoy some of the things that happened there. But you know what? I am not trying to bring all of that here. So when I see other Africans trying to do that, it infuriates me. It's like, what on hell? I left the third world. I escaped the third world. I don't want to see that nonsense here. All right. So I'm sorry. I'm getting animated because I am genuinely upset. Whenever you see these people trying to create these enclaves, we want to speak our language. And if you insist that we learn your language, you're racist. Look, go back where you came from. We don't want you here. We don't want you here. It's true. We don't want you here. I know that white people feel very caged about insisting that people stop speaking their language, especially in the workplaces. Whenever you have people from these countries in workplaces and they start speaking the language and no one else understands what they're saying, yes, you can extend grace to some of them because they struggle to express themselves. But when it becomes a culture where they speak the language and no one else understands, it is concerning. And that is why some of these countries are low trust countries, because they have different tribes with different languages, and sometimes they carry those changes or differences in languages into transactions, and people don't trust it when they don't understand what is being said. That is what contributes to a low trust society. So guys, just learn the language, guys. I think anyone who campaigns in a language that is not English should be disqualified. I think so. Patricia says, if the Chicago government, oh, sorry, I went the wrong way. I picked the the previous comment. Patricia says, China uses this to an advantage that no one group in China can understand another because they have so many dialects. No one can communicate to another group what they like or do not like. I did not know that. Thanks, Patricia, for letting me know that. This issue of language is very important. I come from Nigeria. We have different tribes, over 20 tribes with different languages, and some of them have sub-dialects. It's hard to trust anyone who you don't understand. This is a huge issue, guys. Patricia says, they cannot communicate to even carry on business with each other. A country divided like this cannot survive and will fall. So don't let it happen to the United States. That is my position. Right? So what do you think? What do you think of Patricia's take? Put your thoughts in the chat. If you can't talk, leave an emoji. All right? Leave a heart emoji, thumbs up emoji, thumbs down emoji. Let's know what you think. Patricia says, tribalism can be understood in the West as the same that Europe faced when it was ruled by feudal lords who hated everyone else. They fought each other constantly until countries formed under one leadership, until the countries formed under one leadership. And even at that, you still had some of these sub-tribes that insisted that they wanted to keep their languages. That is why Ireland and Scotland kind of lagged behind when the rest of Britain was surging forward. Eventually, they kept up. If you listen to the lectures of Tom Sowell, you see how he breaks apart the fact that language is a huge factor in whether people succeed or fail within communities or within an economy. And then the sad thing is that now, when people fail because they refuse to assimilate, it's called racism. They claim that someone is racially profiling them. It's insane. Patricia says, they are people operating as a foreign operative. That is, look, guys, if somebody is in your country, refuses to assimilate, insists on speaking their own coded language, what do you think about that? Would you trust a contract drawn up in a language you don't fully understand? That's why I said this is an issue of high trust or low trust. All right. Canary King says, greetings, Canary King. Great to see you on the chat. Great to see you on the chat. All right. So, again, Patricia says, you are saying what a lot of people in America are saying. We see people who want to damage America's laws to fit their own beliefs from a foreign land that they ran away from, not willing to stand up for their own land. And that is the truth. Look, guys, there's no, right now, and I've said it before, there's no other country like the United States of America. And I don't think there ever will be, because the factors that created the United States of America don't exist anywhere else. All right. And there's no free world to create unless you want to create a new continent at the bottom of the ocean and create a new country there. Okay. With people who speak the same language, share the same societal norms, and observe the same Christian religion. Okay. The US Constitution was written for a moral Christian people. I think that's what Tom Jefferson said. So it's not compatible with another group that is not Christian and moral. It is not. You can't take the US Constitution elsewhere and force it to work anywhere else. It will not work. You may have the letter. We have a constitution in Nigeria. It does not work. The Nigerian citizen has no rights. We have no rights. And when you try to insist on your rights, you get snuffed for it. Next comment. Patricia says, they will only use our laws and constitution against us to get what they want. That's why the constitution is built for a Christian moral society, because people who are Christian and moral will not use the constitution as a tool of power against the people who are like you, being ruled by the constitution. The Democrats have been forcing the Constitution to begin to be used like a tool. And that is not what the Constitution is meant to be for. It is meant to protect the American people. It is meant to protect the people against big government. That is the essence of the Constitution, but they continue to push back on the purpose of the Constitution. Patricia says, I said it. Okay, now this is a comment on the drug boats that have been sunk by this is a comment made about the drug boat that was sunk, and people are screaming that Pete Hegseth committed war crimes. She says, I said it, sink the boat. If it didn't sink, hit it again. If the survivors had stayed in the water, they would not have been killed, and they would not have been picked, and they would have been picked up. Yes, because that is the ethos of the U.S. military. Okay, if someone is alive and survives, they will pick you up. But if you try to climb into the vessel that is meant to be destroyed, you will definitely be part of the collateral when a second hit is made. Canary King says Nigeria has a constitution. Yes, Nigeria has a constitution, and sadly, that constitution there was a constitution written in 1989, and then there was another constitution that was drafted, which the government has refused to ratify. All right, so essentially, they have what is called a constitutional congress. The constitutional conference, not congress, conference is whenever they have people who represent the different tribes coming together to discuss how the constitution can be molded into a form that is acceptable to everyone. Now, there was a recent edition of the Constitution, which was essentially people claimed was acceptable to everyone, every tribe in the country, and they have refused to ratify that version of the Constitution. And I believe that that version has been available and has been awaiting ratification for maybe over 10 years. Okay. Canary King says the U.S. Constitution was based on the Iroquois Constitution. It's called the Great Law of Peace. It has been proven over the ages as a federal system, and it works. Yeah, like you've stated that before. My quoting the statement of Tom Jefferson is just incidental. The mechanics of how the Constitution was put together, is something to be observed. And look, we just need to tell the truth. If the founding fathers studied the Iroquois Constitution and learned from it, and a few other things, look, we need to just put it out there and state it. It's no sweat off anyone's back unless you have an agenda. Canary King says, let's be truthful. Nigeria doesn't have a constitution. They don't. And and that's why I had to clarify, because if someone from Nigeria hears this live stream and says you're lying, here's the Nigerian constitution, I'm like, well, that is not a constitution as far as I'm concerned, because it is a document that doesn't protect the rights of the Nigerian citizens. There's this guy who stood up on the Senate floor in Nigeria when he was confronted. Of course, he was trying to defend the fact that President Trump had clearly stated that the United States would intervene on behalf of the citizens of Nigeria who were being slaughtered by the Islamists. He stood up on the floor of the National Assembly to say our constitution doesn't agree with the government persecuting any religious group. Yeah, you guys just read a piece of paper, but what is in action in the streets is very different from that piece of paper that you just read from. They claim that that there's a constitution, but the constitution does not protect the Nigerian citizens at all. For your information, George Washington and Ben Franklin were Masons. Yeah, it's something that has been said, and I have a friend, who sent me a photo on. I think he posted a photo on Facebook. Didn't send it to me. Posted a photo on Facebook. He's a Catholic. And he posted a photo where he was being sworn into the Freemasons. So I'm not going to try to attack or defend it. It's just out there. Okay. So let's see more comments. Patricia says, a lot of Americans were killed on ships that were torpedoed by German submarines, and we were not involved in the war. It took the Japanese hitting Pearl Harbor to force us to confront both the Germans and the Japanese. Meanwhile, yesterday was the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. So we want to remember those who lost their lives. And of course, it was essentially a trigger to bring the United States into the fray. Ukraine is the result of people allowing a major country attack and take land from Ukraine, land they had no right to hold. Okay. Is it land that Ukraine had no right to hold, or land that the Russians have no right to hold? I'm trying to figure out that particular spot in the comment. Now we have the same major country full on creating war against Ukraine. Okay, I can see that. All right. Again, feel free to let your thoughts be known in the chat. Okay, we're essentially trying to catch up with the comments from the chat and also from the comment section. So we are bringing all of that in here and trying to react to those comments. CNN thinks that because, Patricia says, CNN thinks that because they can speak fast, that they have a high IQ. when there are low functioning people who could care less about common sense and history. That is very true. That is very true. Canary King on Ukraine. The Ukraine issue was fumbled by Biden. Yeah, everyone saw it happening in real time. And Democrats want to pretend that that never happened. They're like, nothing to see here. Let's pretend nothing happened. Patricia says, Obama's people were sent back into the White House for Biden's administration. Yes, Obama was calling the shots and his people were carrying out the orders with the auto pen. So since Canary King is saying that the Ukraine issue was fumbled by Biden, could we also say that the Ukraine issue could have been Obama's fault as well, since he was pulling the strings in the background? Let me know in the chat. Let's keep going. Patricia says Obamacare. Okay, they're trying to bring in this 3-year ACA, and I said that I'm suspicious of that ACA bill. And of course, we found out that the Trump administration is planning a rewrite, and the Democrats are trying to head him off from fixing healthcare, because if Trump succeeds in fixing healthcare within the next 3 years, that is it. The Democrats don't have anything to run on. Okay, because I'm sure that they'll be running on, he's taking healthcare from Americans. Ooh, we're so distraught. Ooh, that's what basically they are going to be running on. Oh, and he's Nazi. That's basically their plan for both the midterms and for the next presidential election. Obamacare was the most unconstitutional bill ever passed in Congress. No one read it. That means we, the people, were not represented in the vote to pass it. I saw a video where Nancy Pelosi was asked, what's in the bill? And she said, we have to pass the bill first before we know what's in it. Yep, I saw that video. And if you doubt me, then we can find the video, because it's I think it's in my hard drive. I can find it. Patricia says it should send to the it should be sent to the garbage bin and burnt, the entire 4-foot tall stack. They have denied people their medications that keep them alive. Yeah, that is what people are saying about Obamacare. Patricia says heart patients, people with diabetes, people with rare diseases and disorders, people with seizures, all denied their life-saving drugs with no explanation given. That is horrible. That is horrible. That's massive fraud, because the government is paying for this, subsidizing it, and you still don't get the health care you think you're paying for. And Hakeem Jeffries wants you to believe that reforming it is taking healthcare away from Americans who need it. People are dying. Patricia says death panels made the decision on which people were given which prescription drugs. During that time, people were going to emergency rooms to receive their doses of medications that saved their lives. That's crazy. All right. Now, if you're hearing comments that you agree with, you can give a thumbs up, you can give a thumbs down, you can talk about what you think about the comments or the chat. Okay, react to the chat, respond. All right, this is your show. This was at a cost of $700 plus per dose. Yikes. Get rid of it and go back to the best system ever and fix the pricing that has always been hidden from patients. Now, President Trump has created Trump RX. So most of these life-saving medications are now available for Americans to buy almost at cost, or at least lower than the generally available cost. So already President Trump is making moves that's frightening the Democrat Party when it comes to healthcare. They know what's coming and they're trying to head him off. Canary King says, I'm a bit concerned that Trump is getting sidetracked. The China threat is real. I agree. Canary King says, are we still rebuilding our industrial manufacturing infrastructure, or are we getting sidetracked with fishing boats in Venezuela? I believe that the Trump administration should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I think there are things happening in the background with the other things, the other issues. Everyone in the Trump administration is not focusing on one thing. What tends to happen is that the news cycle focuses on something significant happening and pretends like nothing else is going on that is positive for the United States. So I would say what I think is that the Trump administration is actively working on all of these things. And I don't think he's being sidetracked. I think all of the other agendas are still at play. That's what I think. If we find out that that's not the case, then we can begin to revisit this conversation. Patricia says, when the people at the front of the January 6th crowd started attacking the police barricade, I heard people screaming that it was Antifa doing the attacking, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. You know, whenever the leftists pull out January 6th, it's as if they can't wait to use it. It's as if they knew what was going on. And they just knew that this was a setup. Because who was it that spent most of the summer of 2020 attacking police, burning down businesses, looting businesses, burning cities down? Who? Was it conservatives? Was it Republicans? Or was it leftists and Democrats? You know the answer. Okay, you can put that answer in the chat or in the comment section. You know who did it. Now, to wake up and say, well, it was these other guys. It's like when I did the live stream last week where someone came up to claim that the pipe bomber was a Republican. I'm like, look, I never talked about which party they were from, but if you want to go there, where's the evidence that Republicans do stuff like this? They barely don't. You talk about white nationalist extremists. Okay, fine. Point them out. But they are always fringe. Okay, it is not the mainstream, right-wing party. So they want to push this, and essentially, I have heard as well that that January 6th was an op, and that people who rushed the police were essentially Antifa disguised as MAGA supporters. They wanted chaos so that they could, blame the Republicans or the MAGA Republicans for the chaos. Canary King says, Trump's attention is very valuable. I'm concerned that they are taking him off the mandate. Those people around him have their own agenda. True. Everyone has an agenda. Everyone has an agenda. You have an agenda. I have an agenda. I try to make my agenda simply telling the truth. Okay, I just want to try and keep it as simple as that. Canary King says, Rubio and the Florida Cubans are really rabidly focused on Latin American politics. Cuba, Venezuela, El Salvador, Nicaragua, that's nice, but we can get back to rebuilding. But can we get back to rebuilding our manufacturing sector? Again, I believe all of that is still happening. What I want to try to do is to have a broad focus on what's going on across the board. All right. I want to be able to look at everything that's going on across the board and to cover the stories as evenly as I can. All right. So that's what I try to do. If there's something going on that is fringe, for example, the issue of corruption, we basically focused on the corruption happening and some of the statements made over the weekend by Ilhan Omar and some of the things you don't essentially see being covered about what's going on in the background with the Somali community, with the reason why this fraud was not uncovered. How long has this fraud been going on for? Like, these are questions that people need to have answers to, because whenever you get home from work, kick back with a drink in your hand, whether it's water, juice, or a beer, and then you sit and you're watching the news, you're trusting the news to tell you what exactly is going on. But many times they leave out some of these details, and you really need to take out time out of your busy schedule to do some research for yourself. And essentially, not everyone can. And that's why, I try to kind of piece these stories together. I could simply do what the networks do and do commentary, but sometimes I do commentary, but other times I want to kind of do a deep dive and say, okay, here are the breadcrumbs. Here's what you need to keep your eyes on. This is why this story matters. And that's basically what I try to do today. King says, when the US couldn't manufacture face masks during the pandemic, it was sad that our manufacturing was brought to its knees. Trump has the right strategy to bring back our manufacturing. And I believe it is being executed. But if we see in the next 6 months that there's no movement, then we can, call them out. Because we need to call them out and say, look, we believe that this was going on. How come nothing is moving in this direction? Let's see. Patricia says, still continuing on the January 6th setup. Later, a man in Utah was arrested after he made a post on social media that he was a member of Antifa sent to D.C. to infiltrate the Trump supporters and start a riot at the Capitol. That story was never a headline across the country. I did not know about that. I didn't know about that. Guys, Patricia does her research. She does her research, and she has some scary information, okay? I am not someone who likes to pander to credentialism, okay? It took a while before any of you knew that I studied in the medical field. I don't like credentialism. I actually despise credentialism because of what I've seen it do in Nigeria. But Patricia is former military. She figures these things out. And whenever she talks about these things, I tend to kind of pay attention and say, okay, that's freaky. Do you know what? There was a time we were having a conversation, and while she was talking, I had my Google tab open, and I was Googling everything she was saying, and she was rattling off stuff, and it was like accurate. I was like, okay. She said, Patricia and Canary King are eager to start a conversation that leans towards some other conversation topics, like aliens, UFOs, Area 57, and so on, and a few other things. And I'm eager to go that way. All right, I'm eager to go that way. We're yet to kind of have a consensus on how that's going to work, but we are definitely going to be doing that. Okay, now we've hit the hour mark, and we'll be back tonight. All right, we'll be going over the stories that are developing. We're going to be engaging you guys in the chat. We're going to be talking about so many things. The afternoon sessions tend to be mellow because everybody, look, we are responsible people. Most of us are at work. Most of us are busy with other things. You know what? Today is a snow day. I have almost a foot of snow in my driveway. So I'm going to have to get my son to shovel snow this afternoon, and I'll have my whip. Okay, no, that might trigger some people, but I'm definitely going to be urging him to shovel the snow in the driveway to kind of do what we do, like coming from the tropics and shoveling snow. Like my first winter It was like, oh, this is beautiful. And then the first time I was snowed in, I was like, this is horrible. My second winter, I think there was one time, was it the second or third winter? I had 4 feet of snow in my driveway. And I had to shovel all that out because my son wasn't big enough or strong enough at the time to do that. Now he's almost as tall as me, so I can put him to work. All right. He's eating my food, staying under my roof, not paying rent. So the least he can do, is labor. All right. But okay, well, yeah, so there's lots happening for a lot of us, but as conservatives, we always want to take care of business. We want to take care of our families, our loved ones. We want to take care of business. We're running our businesses, or we're at work. So afternoon sessions tend to be, mellow, unless I'm talking about something that is like really incendiary, and people jump into the chat to, speak their mind. Today's news is really, do people really care about what's going on in Minnesota? All right. Do people really care about what's going on in Minnesota? Let me know in the comment section. Honestly, I do. I want the West to remain the West. Okay. And what I don't and I don't mean I want the West to be white. If you're going to be multicultural, all right, that is not good for the West. There is a culture that has built up the West. Anyone who comes into the West has to adopt that culture, that ethos. So when I hear multiculturalism, all kinds of alarms explode in my brain. There is a culture that built up Manhattan, New York, that built up the United States. Okay. And I'm talking about the good culture, the work ethic, the central singular language, Christmas, where you celebrate Christmas and nobody is coming with their camera and singing Allahu Akbar in the middle of the Christmas lighting ceremony in order to tell you, look, you can't do anything to me. I have videos of that happening. So the culture has to be preserved. It has to be, the sanctity of Western culture has to be preserved. Anyone who is pushing against Western culture being maintained and calling it white and racist have an agenda. They want to assume control of the things that Western culture has built. That is all they are trying to do. They can build nothing. They can create nothing. All they do is, like President Trump said, bitch and moan about how they are not the ones in charge. They can't build anything. Canary Kane says the West is way too broad. You mean the US? You have to unpack it. Okay, it is worthy of being unpacked. Whenever we say Western culture, okay, it does involve the culture that stemmed from Europe, because the pilgrims, okay, the settlers who came to North America, to the United States, to the colonies that eventually became the United States, all came from Europe. All right, a few of them came from the Netherlands. Most of them, a large number of them, came from England. Some of them came from Ireland and Scotland later, and then you have a handful of them coming from Germany. And then a handful were French, but I think that was the offset of the French in the Louisiana area and so on. Like, they all came together, but they all had a value that was essentially molded by Christian values in Europe. So that's what I mean. Whenever I say Western culture, that Western culture that came in to North America formed the foundation and the basis of the culture you see in the United States. That is why we watched Ilhan Omar talk about how she talked about how the Irish and the Jews, and I think she mentioned the Germans, if I recall correctly or not, the Italians, came to the United States and, you know, assimilated and everything, but she leaves out the fact that these people came from Western Europe. They all had the same similar general values, Christian. Okay, they were all from Western Europe, and they could essentially come in and then integrate. Canary King is, let's see, American culture is not Western culture per se. There are some overlapping areas. They are overlapping, but whenever I agree that they are overlapping, and American culture is very different because after the settlers came, it evolved. Like there was an evolution, so that but the base was always the culture that was established in Europe. All right, they didn't come and erase everything they did or learned from Europe. They built on top of it, and then they modified some of the things. They didn't have an elite class. All right, they abhorred the elite class, and that culture still exists within the United States ethos. People in the United States tend to abhor the elite, and that's why whenever politicians go out there to pander for votes, they always come up with, you know, I'm an everyman, you know, I will, and some of them lie, like Gavin Newsom claimed that he was poor, and you know, everyone knows that he's not poor. Kaneki said, no, the Pilgrims were escaping European culture. No, they were escaping persecution. They were escaping persecution. Okay, they were called the Puritans. Okay, they were called the Puritans, and then they were escaping persecution of the crown, essentially. And then they moved over to the New World. Okay, now let's see. Ilhan, Omar isn't a philosopher. She's not. She's not. Canary King says, no, your theory isn't backed by the fact about American culture. No, we're saying the same thing. Canary King is pushing back yet again, and I'm not going to bite. I'm just going to say, yeah. I'm just going to say, yeah. We always land at the same place like we just did just now. Boom. He says, Canary King says, yes, escaping persecution of European culture. Canary King lives in New York, by the way. All right, so he knows, like, New Yorkers have this fire in them. Like there's always a fight somewhere. All right, that's what I think. I might be wrong, but people from New York have an edge to them. There's always a fight to them. Yeah. Yep. I won't bite. I will not bite. Canary King, always a pleasure having you here. Well, missed you for a couple of days last week, but I always knew that you were shadowing the live chat. All right. So if you're watching and you've enjoyed the show so far, please consider leaving a comment. Consider hitting the thumbs up button. Say, I like this video. And then, look, I didn't get sucked in today, Canary King. I have gotten skilled. I have upped my skill level. Oh, yeah, usually. Look, you guys are training me on how to be good at this, because by the time we have 50 people, okay, who are similar to you, not exactly like you, but are similar to you, and are trying to get me to take the bait, I have to be able to, in real time, not take the bait from 50 people chatting at the same time, trying to get my attention and trying to get me into a conversation. Look, let's work on that show where we talk about Bigfoot, Area 51, or we decide to debate our perspectives on these topics. All right. Now, I am not very keen on debates. I like to share ideas, but when it comes to debates, it's like I don't want to look. I'm a weird kind of person. Sometimes I enter into conversations and it's like I want to win this conversation, you know, but only because the facts I have are valid. But if it's an argument for the sake of argument, I just shrink away from it and say, look, no. I would rather not have that argument. I want to come away from the exchange believing that I learned something and that I was able to provide value to the other person. So I think that's the way I feel genuinely on the inside. Canerican says that's exactly right. I guess you're referring to when 50 people like you are in the chat, or is it when we set up the unique show? Now, I was about to invite everyone who's watching after the fact or who's watching right now, consider following, subscribing, liking the channel. Hit the thumbs up icon to tell YouTube, get more people like me to see this dude's video or this dude's live stream. It would be great. Now, if you're watching after the fact, I would love to have you while the live stream is ongoing. Consider joining us while the live streams are ongoing. Whenever we go live at noon Eastern and at 9 p.m. Eastern. Now, to be notified when we go live, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon. The bell icon is very important because it lets you know once I go live. You get a notification and you see when I go live. And it keeps you up to date whenever new updates are posted in the community section of the channel. If you feel like you enjoyed the content and you want to support truth-telling and content creators like me, consider leaving a donation either by leaving a super chat or by a super thank in the comment section if you're watching after the fact. These donations help keep the channel going. It helps me keep the lights on. It justifies the copious amount of hours I spend in researching the stories, trying to make sure that I'm telling you the truth and not a narrative. And if you feel like you want to partner with me to keep this going, consider becoming a member of the channel. To become a member of the channel, you can use the link in the description of this live stream. It takes you to the members sign up page, and you can choose a package to support me on, from the lowest tier membership to the highest tier membership. I'm hoping to be able to create more value for members. I was thinking of doing a members only live stream over the weekends. I want to be able to give you guys massive value and massive engagement, access to me like no one else has access to me. And I would love to be able to do that. So if you feel like that's something you want to do, please consider becoming a member. However, donations are welcome. Your eyeballs are welcome. Okay, just keep watching. If you can't donate or do anything financial, your eyeballs and your chats are very important. So if all you do is put emojis in the chat because you can't type anything, or you agree, disagree, you don't have to, say much. Just give a thumbs up or a thumb down. You agree with what I'm saying, okay, jolly good show. You don't agree with what I'm saying, okay, fine. We're having a conversation. You don't have to. This is not a cult. This is not a cult. We have conversations. Canary King and I do this regularly. If you watch the last 5 minutes, you could see Canary King trying to get me into one of our epic conversations. We've had epic disagreements, okay, during the live stream, and we love each other. Like, we're good, but he likes to set landmines. He sends these comments and it's like, okay, I'm agreeing. And then he ropes me into well, this is where you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, I can either take the bait and start arguing this point, or I can sidestep and move on. And I've learned how to sidestep Canary Kings. But some days I choose to dive in. Okay, so I believe I will be diving in when we start having these special episodes. Plus, we have a call-in feature. We have a call-in feature that I am desperate to activate, but I can't activate it when the chat is not as active as it should be. I don't want to put out the call-in feature and people in the chat aren't essentially fired up enough to have a conversation. But beyond all of this, I want this to be a family. I want this to be a family. Let this be your quasi family. Okay, it's a quasi family. It's like, this is my family when we're talking about news, politics, and culture. These are my guys. These are people that I can fight with. I can even call them names, but they are my people. All right. That's what I want to be able to create here. And that means that we should be able to have deep conversations beyond just the news. Tell me how you're feeling. And you know what? I didn't even ask, how rude of me. How was your weekend? How was your weekend and how is your lunch going? Because this is your lunch break for a lot of people somewhere in North America. And this is the end of the business day for a bunch of people in Europe and also Australia. I'm sure you guys are in bed already. So I want this to be somewhere we can talk about stuff. Okay, if you're going through stuff and you just want to say, hey, I've been going through this, keep me in your prayers, leave it in the chat. All right, guys, don't just stick to, like, we talk about the news because the news is important. It's important, but why do we talk about the news? It's because of our families, our children. Some of us have investments and we're like, this crazy decision by the government is about to nuke my investments. All right, talk about it, and then we kind of go through those seasons together. And speaking of personal, before I go, all right, since I am urging you to be personal, I am my mother is getting buried. The funeral for her is happening in January, the first weekend in January, and I cannot make it. I can't make it because I can't leave the country. My paperwork is still being processed. My permanent residency is still being worked on. I can't leave the country. I can't be there. So many months ago, she died in March. She died on the 1st of March. I've told this story several times. And several times I've told this story, you know, it's been very emotional, but I think I'm healing, you know, a lot better now. So she died the 1st of March. Preparations for her funeral have been ongoing for most of the year. It has shaped her passing has shaped a lot of what has happened for me this year. And what I will say is, you know, you guys just, if you pray, okay, keep me in your prayers. I haven't been able to do as much as I would love to support in the preparations for her funeral. Canary Kane says, my condolences. Thank you so much. I haven't been able to, I've told my story and I don't want to give you any sub stories or anything. And the truth was that for a while, last year when she was still with us, she was going through, she was advancing in dementia. She lived in the United States for many years, and then she got sick. She didn't have healthcare coverage. It was too expensive to care for her in the US, and she was sent back to Nigeria to be cared for by family in Nigeria. At the time, I was in Nigeria, and family took care of her. And then we had to leave, and we left, but we kept supporting. And at one point, the YouTube channel became something that I was working on to provide extra funds to send back to her to take care of her. And by the early part of this year, so in November of last year, I decided, okay, I was going to use the revenue from the YouTube channel when it got monetized, because at the time it wasn't monetized. So I began to take it seriously because I needed to raise money to care for my mom. I began to work harder on the channel. If you go back and look at the videos that were released during that period, you see that I released a ton of shorts, a ton of videos, because I was now working on getting the channel monetized so that I could raise extra funds to send home for the care of my mother. By December 24th, it was monetized. The first check from YouTube came, I think it was February. I think it was either January or February. The first check came in. And there was a time when I made a healthy, you know, sum from YouTube. And then I sent a bunch of it back for her care. After she died, I stopped making videos because I was grieving. I didn't understand what was going on, but I just stopped, and the channel plummeted, performance plummeted, and so on. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because at one point, the thing that drove me to kind of monetize the channel, at first it was, I'm doing this because I want my kids to learn how to respond to the news and politics. In the middle of that, I needed to take care of my mom because bills needed to be paid, and I wasn't making nearly enough to do that. I needed the channel to make money. I put in extra effort so that it would be monetized, and then it got monetized. I was able to send some of that money towards her care. After she died, I lost all motivation to keep creating videos, and for almost 2 months, I didn't create videos, and the performance plummeted. There was a time when the channel was getting over 100,000 views a day. It plummeted to less than 100 at one point because I wasn't doing videos at all. That is YouTube for you. I sent out a post to the community and said, guys, here's what's happening with me. I'm grieving. My mom passed, and I can't make videos. And a few of you responded and says, we will be here when you get back. And you guys have been here, and I'm grateful. So for the last 6 months, I have been trying to rebuild the channel. And then we switched over to live streaming every day. That is how we got here. Now, I'm kind of giving you the backstory because now that I'm making a call for support and everything, it is because it is important now for me, because the motivation now has gone beyond that to my paperwork is being processed, but I can't hold down a 9-to-5. I worked as an analyst for 3 years, and for almost 3 years, let me be accurate, for almost 3 years. And now I can't get a job because I don't have the paperwork. So this is more like my full-time job that I can legally do until then. So I have a mortgage to pay. I could jolly well say, look, if YouTube is not making any money, I have to, if I got my paperwork today and it's like, okay, I need to get a job, I would have to switch over and begin to do work at either a Walmart or cut grass because I have to provide. I have to do things or position myself to provide, okay, for the family. Now, if this is boring for you, that's fine. It's okay. But if you understand what I'm saying and what this entails for me, it means, like I'm saying, if you want me to keep doing what I'm doing and you want to support me and encourage me to eventually do this full time, like you get to see me now at twice a day. If in the end I need to cut it by half and say, okay, I need to do a 9-to-5, it's going to mean I'm going to have to stop working on YouTube and divide my attention between a 9-to-5 and YouTube. If circumstances change and it's not conducive to even do a daily evening live stream, it will demand me reducing the number of days I live stream. So I don't think it would be great for me to reduce the number of live streams that I do. I personally don't want to need to reduce it down to live streaming in the evenings twice a week. All right. I've gotten so used to hanging out with you guys, and I hope you guys have gotten used to hanging out with me. So that's why I'm saying, all right, the financial support from the donations, from the memberships, need to be called for. I'm like, I need to say this. I need to talk with you guys and let you guys know this is where it's at, and I need your support. So in spite of all of that, I opened up with I haven't been able to support as much as I can. If you feel like you want to support the funeral arrangements for my mom, I haven't been able to do much of anything for the last 6 months towards the funeral preparations, and I feel horrible about that. If you want to put up some donation and say, look, we want to support your mom's funeral, okay, let me know. If anything you're donating. Now, I don't, if you put something in through the super chat or super thank, I won't be able to access that those funds until possibly the 21st of December, if everything goes well. I hope I can access them by the 21st of December. That means I should be able to forward some funds to my family to move some of the arrangements forward. If you want to donate towards the funeral arrangements of my mom exclusively, maybe you can leave a donation as a super chat or super thank. YouTube usually takes about 30% of the proceeds, but that's the best I can do. So you can put that as a super chat or super thank donation, and maybe the comment would be for the funeral. I'll have to do some accounting to identify which ones go towards the funeral, and I'm going to let you know how much was raised, and I'm going to definitely let you know that it was sent. I've never done anything like this before. That's why I'm sounding so super awkward about it. So I don't, and this was not planned. This was not planned. All right, this was not planned. And in case you guys are wondering, I don't have hundreds of people who are watching me right now. So it's like I'm speaking to a handful of people who have stayed till the very end of this live stream, or who have joined at the very end of this live stream and are listening to me right now talking about something that is not the thumbnail or title. This is just us talking, and I'm just trying to just tell you, okay, this is where my headspace is at. I could ignore the fact that this funeral is coming up and I can't do anything, and I'll just fold my hands. But this is my 9-to-5 job. And currently, it is not generating nearly enough in views to allow me do what I feel like I should be doing to support the arrangements for my mom's funeral. So if you're watching in real time, consider leaving a donation. YouTube donations are more secure. I'll let you consider doing that on YouTube, even though YouTube is going to grab a 30% chunk of the donations. If you just want to support as a member and you want to sign up as a member, use the link in the live stream video. Just go down to the description and you see the link for donations. You see the link for joining the membership. This is really and if you do something, if you say, okay, I just did a membership, I did, leave a chat and say I joined the membership just to support your channel. Or if you did a donation using the link in the description, say I donated towards the funeral. Right now, I'm not talking about myself, even though I definitely need the assistance personally, but I just want to see what I can do in these last few days. The funeral will be the first Saturday of January. Let me just make sure I have the dates down. First Saturday in January. Sorry. Just all this is not planned. I just felt like I'm talking with my people, so I'm just going to let you guys know what's up. So that's the 4th of January. No, that's 2025. Sorry. That's the 3rd of January, 2026. So that is an update with me. I have a lot going on. This year has been like going through a crucible, and to be honest, I think I have been numb for most of it. I have been numb for most of it, and maybe occasionally whenever I talk about my mom's passing and immigration, because that played a part, and people think that I'm shilling for the Trump administration because it doesn't affect me personally. My mom had to leave the country because she couldn't afford healthcare. So whenever Hakeem Jeffries jumps in front of the microphone and tries to weaponize that, I get really cross. Okay, so that's really part of, like, I get passionate about these things, not because I hate people, but because these are things that my family has experienced and gone through. So in the end, who knows, maybe on the 3rd of January, I might break down and the whole thing will hit me. I'm not going to be physically present in Nigeria for the funeral. So I might be here, and maybe at some point it will dawn on me, or maybe someone will send me a video, and all the emotions will come flooding back, and then it will just explode out of me. Who knows? Or maybe it will happen on the anniversary of her death, next March. I don't know, but I've been numb for most of it. Occasionally, I've wept during the live stream. Some of you are either fortunate or not fortunate enough to see me cry on the live stream. You've seen me rage. You've seen me complain. You've seen me talk about other things. You've seen me laugh. Some of you haven't seen me cry, and I've done that during a live stream where I was talking about immigration and how it connects to my mom's passing and everything, and healthcare and everything. So maybe I'm still numb. But who knows? So I just felt that I should include that, because I'm asking you guys to be vulnerable and to share your own struggles and your thoughts and things that might not be completely related to the news. But look, guys, this is a community. This is essentially like a family, and we should be able to kind of talk about stuff, okay, even if the stuff we talk about isn't entirely or directly connected to the news stories that we're covering. So this is just me kind of opening the floodgates of topics that are not essentially related to the news, but for us to just talk about stuff that that may matter to us. Okay, so that is me just doing that, and doing it at the very end of the live stream isn't I could have opened up the live stream with a pan open, panhandling for donations, but I just didn't plan for this. I just wanted to come up, hang out with you guys, and just tell the news. But once I said, you guys, let's talk about things that matter to you as well. It would be disingenuous for me to ask you guys to do something that I haven't done. So consider doing that yourselves as well. I love hanging out with you guys. Canarican says, hang in there, brighter times ahead. Yeah. And I believe that. I believe that. So thank you guys for hanging out. It's been longer than usual. We're 42 minutes over the hour mark, but we're hanging out, we're talking. And to be honest with you guys, like I keep saying, I love hanging out with you guys, and I do enjoy these conversations that we have. Thank you so much for being a part of this live stream. We're going to be live again tonight, this evening at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be covering stories, and we're going to be having a conversation, and we're also going to be covering comments from the comments section. Thank you so much for being a part of this live stream. And until tonight, God bless you, and I'll see you then. Welcome to Headlines and History, live news reactions and your views. We're about to go live soon, so grab your spot and get ready for a sharp, balanced take on today's biggest news stories with a dash of historical insight. Stay tuned. Each week, we tackle the headlines that matter: politics, economics, global events with a balanced lens. We'll react live, tie today's stories to historical moments, and spotlight your views in the chat. From trade talks echoing the 1990s to crises recalling 2008, we're here to unpack it all. Your voice drives the show. Share your thoughts or historical parallels in the live chat, and we'll dive into the best ones. It's news, context, and community all in 1 hour. We're moments away from launching headlines and history. Stick around for live reactions, historical nuggets, and your chance to chime in. Hit the notification bell, prep your comments, and let's make sense of the news together. See you soon.